So hi everyone, welcome to today. We are having a conversation with a few undergraduate students at Georgia Tech. They focus on research and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But today is all about asking questions and getting them answered from current researchers at Georgia Tech. And so I'm going to hand it over to Gracie after I introduce myself. So hi, my name is Risha Reed and I work on student innovation and undergraduate research within the Office of Undergraduate Education. And so my job is to help students find opportunities both on and off campus. I also manage the program that helps to pay students to do research on campus. And so that's some of the things that I do. If you're thinking about doing research on campus or off campus, feel free to reach out to me at europe.gatech.edu. And I'll put that link in the chat. And I'm then going to hand it over now to Gracie to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gracie. I'm going to be a fourth year psychology student now. I'm also a business student, and I'll be asking the questions today. So are we good to go, Risha?
Yes.
Ask questions. Awesome. Okay. So starting out, can everyone introduce themselves and tell us what you're currently focusing on in research?
My name is Andy. I'm currently focusing on computational chemistry.
Hi, so my name's Anisha. I'm a third year neuroscience major. I study neuroplasticity, and specifically, I'm looking at spatial navigation and how we can utilize it to get a better insight into potential onset of cognitive impairment and neurodegeneration in aging patients.
Alden?
Hi, I'm Alden, and I am currently focusing on research in quantum materials. Specifically over the summer, I'm working with solid state qubits and defects in order to recognize nanoscale magnetometry and various other applications.
Then Fiza, if you're on the call, could you unmute yourself so we can...
Hello, can you guys see me?
Yes. There we go.
Wait, can you guys hear me and see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm so sorry about my name. I'll go ahead and change that in a second. My name is Fiza. I'm a rising senior physics major. I'm also a computer science minor. I also do quantum materials research. So during the school year, I do 2D crystalline materials and ballistic transport. And then over the summer right now, I'm doing 3D crystalline materials and ballistic transport and that. But yeah, I'm really excited.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah. I am a rising fourth year and I'm currently a business administration major with minors in biology and HMed, which is health and medical sciences. Right now I am doing research in biology education, so studying the differences in knowledge organization between novices, which are beginners, and experts in the field of biology.
Awesome. All right, thank you everyone. So next question is, what do you remember about applying for your present and past research positions?
The biggest thing I remember is being very persistent. Like I first asked the advisor for a list of professors who work in the area of my interest. And then I met with one of the professors, and then he referred me to another professor. And that professor was the one I'm currently working with. So just be persistent, don't give up.
I also have to agree with Andy. So when I first got into Georgia Tech, I was really excited about getting into research. I really wanted to jump in right away. So I ended up emailing a bunch of professors and asking if they had space in their labs. And unfortunately, some of them said that my career goals and interests at the time weren't aligned with their research. So I had to keep looking, keep emailing professors and seeing what my options were. Eventually, I was able to find a VIP group or team that I was interested in. So VIP is vertically integrated projects. You'll probably hear more about it later in your college career or throughout your college career. But I applied for one of those teams, and that meeting time ended up coinciding with one of my classes for the next semester. So even though I got in the team, I couldn't join because of that reason. So I was just like, wow, it keeps getting blocked for me. And I just kept on emailing, praying, hoping for the best. And then eventually I was on the biology majors portal on my Canvas. Canvas is like a site that you'll use a lot as a student at Georgia Tech. And I was able to find an opportunity there, biology opportunity, with my lab professor at the time. And he was looking for undergraduate researchers to help him in his lab. And this is the current research I'm doing, so biology education research. And I'm so glad I stayed persistent and emailed him, and I set up the interview, and I actually got into his lab. So it's been a great experience ever since. So one of my biggest advice from that is to just stay persistent, like Andy said, and keep going, because you never know what you're gonna find.
Yeah, I will also say, so my pathway into research, I got started my second semester at Tech. And when I did it, I cold emailed to professors, and actually not professors, just researchers. They don't have classes, but I cold emailed, and one of them has yet to date to never reply. I've never heard anything other than announcements. And the other one replied within 2 days, and I ended up really loving that lab, and I'm still in that lab a year and a half later. So yeah, it works out sometimes, but definitely staying persistent is something that I've learned, especially through advising students interested in getting into research.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Anisha, definitely persistence is key. Especially, at least in my department, professors are not that great about checking up on their emails and getting back to students. So I took it to a whole nother level, and I built this Python script to continuously message them it was like a different interval of days after a certain point. So after the first email, I waited 2 weeks, then I emailed them again, then I waited a week, then I emailed them again, and it was every day at a certain point if they hadn't emailed me back in 3 months. It worked. I got a couple people who talked to me and were like, oh yeah, we would love to have you in our lab. I actually am working in the lab that I heard about in high school. It actually is the lab that introduced me to Georgia Tech. I'm out of state, so this was a school that was kind of off my radar. But yeah, it's really great. Definitely persistence is key. And just be patient. It'll come.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think to add something that I think was said a little bit before, but really to hone it in, I think also, sending a lot of emails and reaching out, but having an open mind about what types of research you do. Maybe you have one idea of what you want to do coming into this, and it just may so happen that there's no professors that have open positions for the semester you're looking to get started in. If that's the case, then it's always good to look and see what other researchers are out there. A lot of times you can end up doing something you didn't think you wanted to do, but ends up, maybe something long-term you can hone your skills in and develop more.
Definitely, yeah. All right. So did you go straight into research as a first-year student? And I know some of you guys have answered that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I can get it started. So like I said earlier, I started my second semester. I knew coming in, I definitely wanted to get involved with research, and I actually took the Undergraduate Research Office's GT 1000 class. So I kind of prepped for it, and I wanted to get adjusted before I really dove in. So I started second semester.
Yeah, I have an interesting story here. My story was when I started college, my first semester, I was at Kennesaw State, but then I got accepted into Georgia Tech after one semester at Kennesaw State. So when I found out I got accepted, I knew I wanted to do research. So, so even before classes start the semester, I started at Georgia Tech. That's when I started reaching out to professors. And, luckily I ended up with a professor even before I started Georgia Tech because of that.
I started reaching out earlier as well, and I started my first semester.
I started the second semester of my freshman year, and hello, can y'all hear me? Okay, I'm having trouble with my mic right now. Okay, so yeah, I started the second semester of my first year, and I also took to the Undergraduate Research Ambassador's office hours at the time, because when I was preparing for the interview, I wasn't sure exactly how to navigate through the questions or what kind of questions was going to be asked. So yeah, we're all part of the undergraduate research ambassadors, as was said in the chat by Risha. But they are a really helpful resource. We're a really helpful resource for learning how to reach out to professors and learning how to tackle interviews, which is one thing that I really jumped into, and that helped me a lot. So when I met with the person there, she guided me through what kind of questions will be asked and what questions I should be asking to stand out as an interviewee. And it was really helpful. So I really highly recommend coming to one of our office hours. I'm just giving a little plug, shout out to that. But yeah, I also just started second semester, like the question asked.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't start my first year. I started my second semester of my second year, just because COVID really threw us a curveball for part of that. I knew I wanted to be in research like when I got accepted into Georgia Tech, but in my first year, I was told by a lot of the professors that I talked to that I would need more experience, especially in the lab. And so instead of joining research, I joined a VIP for my first year into my second year. And I'm still also in a VIP with my research lab because I enjoyed it that much. But yeah, if you feel like you may be lacking skills, a great way to start off would be a VIP and then work from there.
Definitely. I'm also in a VIP. They're great. So before I ask the next question, I just want to say feel free to type any questions you have in the chat and we will make sure to get to those. Risha's monitoring that. So Kunal just asked, what is a VIP? We can go ahead and answer that, Fiza, if you want to ask or answer them.
So as Hannah talked about it earlier, it's vertically integrated projects, right? So that's basically a student-led research project. So my one is on high altitude balloons and building like the stratospheric payloads for that. And so I do a lot of more like electrical engineering and CS on that team, but it kind of does tie in with what I do in physics, which is like building quantum materials, which are used in semiconductors and microprocessors. But it's essentially like one professor will have like a lot of funding and like a lot of kids under him, and you guys will work together over the semester to do stuff. And it's not like just like high altitude balloon stuff. There's also teams which like study animals and they talk about optimizing certain like civil engineering things. I honestly don't know. I did another VIP which was on optimizing graphene technologies. But yeah, it's really diverse, really open.
Someone just
Gracie, you're
asked.
muted.
Yeah, thank you. No, you're good.
Mhm.
Someone just asked, would it be possible to do both VIP and professor research your first year?
So your VIP, you have to, it starts in your second year. That's when you have access to it, unless you come in with enough credits. So some students may have enough credits that they're actually a sophomore, but they're coming in as a first year student. So if you're classified that way, then you have access to VIP. Otherwise, then you only have access starting your second year at Georgia Tech.
And as I just, I replied in the chat, but also it is possible to do both at the same time. In fact, I even know people who work in two different professors' labs. The main thing to stress though is you want to make sure to balance yourself, and if you feel you can do it, then you can attempt it, but you don't want to it's never good to overload. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So next question is, why did you pick the research environment or lab you're in now?
I can go. So I decided on my lab in probably the weirdest way ever, but something that was important to me was having a more like casual environment where someone was really invested in my success as a student, and that's kind of what keeps me in my research lab. So during my interview, it was really interesting. My PI started off the interview kind of talking about art. He was like, "Oh, your background, it's so beautiful. Is that your art? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, wow, you're so good. And I was like, this is really casual for an interview. I'm not sure what's going on. So that was kind of a big thing for me, where I was like, I feel already comfortable having conversations with the PI in general. And like, that was important. And I could tell from our conversation at that time and in the oncoming semester that he was invested in my growth, and the lab as a whole was invested in my growth as an individual and my goals for like med school and potentially grad school. So that was really important, as well as the mentorship aspects and the connections that they are able to put me in. So yeah.
Just to go off what Anisha said, yeah, I really, I mean, this is true for a lot of things, undergraduate research, PhDs, anything. Who your mentor is really matters a lot. And you know, sometimes I've even heard it's not necessarily about what your research is as much as how well you connect with your mentor, because they are going to be your advocate. They're going to be who teaches you the things in the lab. And if you have a bad mentor, it's going to be really bad. If you have a good mentor, it's going to be really good. So that's definitely something that's important. And as far as why I chose my lab is, they were, well, one of the first ones that reached out and replied to me. And it was an area of physics I wasn't necessarily sure I wanted to go to, but I met with the professor for the first time and we had a really good conversation and things just went really well. And I had a feeling that it was going to work out well. So I decided to take it. And since then, I've really fallen in love with this area or this sector of research of condensed matter physics. So yeah, I mean, it just, you know, it was surprising, but it all worked out.
I think having an initial connection with my PI was really helpful. So like I said earlier, my PI was my lab professor for both my first and second semester of Georgia Tech. So having that connection already was like, I need to be with him. Like when I saw his name and he was looking for researchers, I was like, oh my gosh, let me come to you, because I was just super excited since I really enjoyed him as a lab professor. So it's like, maybe joining as like one of his undergraduate researchers will be fun. So having that interview, oh, I just saw a question in the chat. What is a PI? PI is a peer investigator. So that's usually like the professor that you're working with that oversees your research. And yeah, my PI was my lab professor. So that was just really cool. And having that interview and having that initial like casual conversation like Anisha was talking about really opened me up, and I was like, okay, I feel like this is going to be a really valuable experience for me, not only just learning different things and applying stuff outside of the classroom to my research, but also just establishing that connection with my PI and having I have 2 other assistants in that lab as well, and so we're just like friends now, we're buddies. And my PI is also, he considers me and one of like the other undergraduate researchers in my lab as like his daughters. Like that's what he calls us, because we established such a close connection. So yeah, it's been really nice, and having him as like a mentor, and also we talk about other things not related to research, and in the future he could also be a good source for recommendation. That's been really cool. So yeah, that casual relationship is pretty important to me as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the biggest reasons why I stick to my lab, I've been working in the same lab ever since I was a second semester, my first year, is because I did have a very good relationship with my mentor. He was always very supportive of me. And how I got started in that lab was I initially started out as a biochem major, and then I just knew I really liked the code, so I decided to check out computational chemistry. And then I stumbled upon his lab because of it. And then I liked coding so much that I changed my major to computer science, but I kept my chemistry minor.
Yeah, just to add on to both Alden and Anisha's points, like being really comfortable with your PI is really important, because it like does allow you to have that closer relationship. In my case, I kind of liked my lab before I got to college. Like I had known about them, and so when I was like emailed back, and I was really excited to know about them. Also, my PI is a girl boss, and I really love women in STEM. In condensed matter physics, girl bosses, elite. Okay. Yeah, that was a big deciding factor, because if I want to be a girl boss, I have to be with a girl boss.
Definitely. totally agree. All right. Next question is, what were some of the hardest transitions you've had when you began your research position?
Reading a paper. That was the hardest thing of my life. So I read like a review paper. He sent me a very, very technical neuroscience review paper, and I Googled every single word. I was sitting there and I was like, that makes no sense. It took me like 3 days of actually sitting down and reading and rereading that same paper. I read it 4 times in the span of 3 days. And it's like a 10, 20 page paper. So it's not that long, but I was like, I have to do this perfectly, have to learn to write a summary, like, and now it takes me like less than 5 minutes. And like, I know the terminology so well, but that was like the worst thing for me when I first got started.
One of the hardest things in my transition was balancing classes with my research project. I really enjoyed my project, which was nice, but it would sometimes be a form of procrastination, just because it's something I could, because it is work, and it's something I was like, oh, this is something that's productive, but I enjoyed doing it. So I would maybe put a little bit too much emphasis on the research project. And so yeah, learning how to balance that with the normal classes you take in the semester was probably my hardest transition.
I totally agree with Alden. I also struggled with that balance. So before I switched to a business administration major, I was actually a biology major, and my goal was to be a doctor. I was a pre-med student, and I was really into a lot of the clubs and organizations I was a part of, but also doing this research and balancing it with classes. And I was also very passionate about the research I was doing. So I was just having so much fun, and I would get drawn into it. And then I find that I have like no time to do my other stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? The transition to do that, like balancing out everything you have, is always hard, especially as a first year. So it's important to learn how to do that. And if you ever need any like guidance, you can always ask someone who's older than you. Upperclassmen are great resources. And also any of us, you can reach out to us to ask about how we manage that. I think we'll also be talking about that later in this meeting.
Yeah, balancing research with classes and extracurriculars and any other hobby you have, that is truly something to learn. And I am still learning every day. But I think for me, one of the biggest things was like the actual skill set required to work in my research lab. Sometimes, like, we have a bunch of machines with a bunch of little knobs and wires and tubes, and knowing every single part and every single like mechanism. And sometimes you do a half turn, sometimes you do a quarter turn. And it's not like you can Google the answers at all. Like, there's maybe 2 people in the school who know how to use those furnaces, and I'm one of them. Like, it's not really easy to troubleshoot, you know? So that was definitely something that I had to get used to at the beginning. But like over time, you get more accommodated.
I think my biggest difficulty was the fact that I didn't know what the heck everyone was saying. Like, because when I joined my lab, everyone there was either a grad student or a postdoc. I was the only undergrad in the lab. And then so I would go to these group presentations, and everyone would just, give presentations. And then they'd all give those complicated presentations with weird equations on them. And I didn't know what any of it was. But so the thing about research is sometimes you got to be prepared to learn and learn very fast and be a self-learner. But eventually I started understanding what everything meant. So it's just I guess growing pains.
Awesome. All right.
Sorry, could I just add to that real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I do want to mention, bouncing off of what Andy said, don't be afraid if you don't exactly know how to do something when you get into the lab, because professors understand that you are just getting into it. And so as long as you're showing that passion and showing that you're willing to learn, whatever it is that you're doing, no matter how complicated it is, that's gonna really make an impression on them. So don't be too worried. Like, I know we're probably sounding scary right now with everything we're saying, but it's not gonna be that intense. Like, you're going to have an opportunity to learn, and it's a learning process, and they understand that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Next question is, what is one of your proudest moments or favorite aspects of doing research at Georgia Tech?
I can get this one started. So one of the proudest aspects of my research was probably my publication. So Fall of 2020, I believe, was when it was like during the COVID year. We had to kind of halt the research we were doing beforehand because we were completely online. We couldn't really do anything in person together. So we switched to a completely different research topic. And at first that was a little nerve-wracking because I had been working on this same project for a long time. And then suddenly we were switching gears and doing something different. But we were analyzing like how biology lab students were navigating through their courses and what resources were helping them, and just looking more into the statistics of that and analyzing that data. And we were able to come up with a whole research paper that was published during that one semester. So I'm really proud that we did that because we were kind of on a crunch trying to get that finished before the next year because we would go back to the research we were doing previously. But it was really fun. It was a fun process to learn how the publication process works, what things go into it, how to navigate through that. But thankfully my PI was so understanding that we were just getting into this. So he was very methodical about it and explained everything in detail. And yeah, it was just honestly really fun. And we got to write different parts of it and also make the figures for it. And we would choose, it was really fun. Like we would all make figures and then the PI and all of us would vote on which figures looked the prettiest and looked the best, that would fit best into the paper. So it was just really fun. And I'm really happy that like at first when I first got into Georgia Tech, I was looking for kind of a wet lab. But this is more of a just data analyzing lab. And so we don't really do any like lab work or use like microscopes or any tools. It's more just data analysis and reading papers and stuff like that. So it's different from what I expected, but I'm really enjoying it.
I can go next. So I've been working since August on like my first long-term big project, and I worked with a group of doctorate physical therapy students. Now they have graduated, but basically we were doing this project that we came up with from all the way at like, what is our question? What do we want to search, to recruiting participants, collecting data from participants, and then actually analyzing the results. And I had the opportunity to do an independent analysis of the data to kind of investigate what I was curious about. And so in this process, there's a lot of background information, but I learned 3 different coding languages in the span of one semester. So I coded an entire VR like task suite, which by the way, I didn't know how to code before doing this. So it was like the worst thing of my life. But I did that, and then I learned Python, and then I learned R to analyze all the data and like do CSV work. But I got through it and it was really fun in the end, and I'm still doing it. But I did all that, and at the end of the semester, I had the opportunity to present my research at 3 different symposiums this past April. And it was like my favorite week of the year because I got awards at all 3 of my presentations. And coming into this, I genuinely was like, I'm not sure the work I'm doing is important. Like, yes, my PI and mentor support me, but they have to support me. So does anyone else care? So like going into that and getting those awards. And then I actually got Pura that week as well. So it was like a home run week, and like I cried a lot. We all got cake and everything, but it was a thing. And I think that's one of my favorite moments and one of my proudest moments so far. And I'm so excited for what's next.
Yeah, going off of what Anisha said about the coding, in my work, I do a lot of coding actually. And when I write code, I usually write code to solve some very hard problems. So whenever I can figure out how to get those things working, I just feel very proud of myself. Like, wow, that was very hard and you figured it out. So I think that's part of research. Like whenever you're trying to solve a very hard problem and then you figure it out, just the feeling of satisfaction you get.
To go off that, so my project, I started like summer of last summer, so a year ago. And then in the last spring semester, we were working and working and working. And finally, after like almost a year of buildup, we finally got like the experimental results. We finally got the instrument we were building and the experimental results we were analyzing to work. And it was just like, an entire year of, worth of work of just relief and excitement. And it was like, it was all just mirages until finally it's like, you did it and you can finally see your results you want. So yeah, that's it's a lot of troubleshooting. It's a lot of It's a lot of not knowing what you're doing until you go back to the literature, read it again, and then do it right. And then also what Anisha said, presenting and also working on publications can be a very exciting moment.
Yeah, I think for me, my proudest moment, I did a conference last November. When I think about it, like the first thing that came into mind was really like whenever I'm in the lab, like the way my lab functions is like I am not assigned to a certain project, I'm assigned to every project. And so every project which needs to do X, Y, Z. Wow, my thing just fell out. But every project that needs to do X, Y, Z, there's only one person who can do it. And they have to basically rely on this individual. And in a lot of those cases, that's me. And so I feel I'm like a little proud whenever they're like, oh, we have to do this, give it to Pisa. I'm like, okay, thank you. You'll have it in 2 business days. But then also like presenting at that conference was really nice because I basically gave a brief overview of every project I'm involved with and what the significance of it is, like technologically.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We have a question in the chat. What's the biggest misconception you may have had about research before getting involved?
So when I initially got involved, I thought that I didn't know enough and that there was not a lot of questions I could really look into, that there wasn't a lot that I could do. And each and every day I find out more and more questions that no one has ever asked or looked into. And it is so interesting. And I'm so glad I was proven wrong. And I also keep learning that you can learn anything if you are dedicated to learning it. And so I'm glad I did it early and I didn't like keep pushing off doing research, telling myself that I didn't have the skill set yet.
Yeah, no, definitely that learning curve is probably the biggest misconception I had because for some reason I thought that like when I came in I had to like know everything. And so I did this thing where like wherever my PI asked a question I didn't know about, I just nodded my head. I was like, yeah. That is not the way, kids. That is not the way. You are going to be confused down the road. If you don't know something, don't feel like afraid to be like, oh, I don't know what that means. Because your PI is well aware you probably have no idea what that means. So that's probably the one you should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think definitely with what Anisha said with I went in thinking that it's like, oh, what can I do? It's like I've barely taken it, a lot of classes. I don't have a lot of experience. It's like, how much can I actually contribute? And it does depend on the lab. Like some labs require, or they like, you've taken X, Y, or Z classes before you start. But there are labs, a lot of labs out there where you can, contribute from the very beginning and really grow as you go. And then also, yeah, just like being good with asking questions, and it's okay to be ignorant about something. And also, I think the biggest thing is like getting a sense of what the field is that you're studying, like your specific project or your areas of project you focus on, but like exactly what is studied in this subfield that your PI is focusing on, because a lot of times that can give you insight into where you want to go into PhD, or if where you want to go into industry or this or that. So that was maybe the biggest surprising thing and the biggest misconception I had about my own little area of physics.
Great answers, guys. Okay. Next question is, what are things you wished you knew now that you didn't know or didn't understand when you started?
Okay, this is something that could just be me, but there's documentation for almost anything when it comes to coding. And I used to literally, well, I didn't know that. I didn't code. So I used to struggle so hard trying to like Google everything. And I never realized that it's literally just all in one big dictionary, basically. So you can just search like this huge dictionary for what things mean. So that's something good to know in case you ever code in the future.
It's a little vague, but I think one thing I wish I knew was how to effectively consume information, whether it's papers or textbooks or this or that. Like when at the very beginning, my default was always like as intense as possible, like handwritten notes on like everything I read, like really it would take me a long time to finish something. Now it's like I have a better understanding of it's like, okay, what's important, what's not important, what am I going to speed read, what am I going to thoroughly read, what am I going to jot that down. And it's not really something you can really translate into words, or there's like an exact formula for every person. So unfortunately, that's something you have to just like learn as you go. But I think being aware of that and being aware of how to more effectively do what you're doing and like read and learn what you're learning is I think that's something to keep at the back of your mind.
Yeah, going off of what Alden says, also a lot of times just like so much information out there, and like you just gotta figure out which ones to consume and which ones to not consume. Because when I first started my research, I was kind of ooh, I want to try this, ooh, I want to try, ooh, I want to try that, ooh, I want to try that. But the thing was like, I wasn't that experienced first. Yeah, so I didn't have the bandwidth to, be able to want to try everything. So I think be able to, like pick out one or two things that interest you and just going with that rather than just getting excited about everything.
Awesome. All right. So next question. Was someone going to say something? Oh, cool. All right. How do you successfully integrate life, research, and academics?
Well,
All right, so we all have something to say about this one.
Yeah.
Good.
At least from my experience, I think of it like a triangle, right? There's like life, academics, and like research. Just choose two. You won't get the third. Like I've tried. Okay, I seriously have. And like you can definitely like at times, of course I have a life. I'm a human being. But like it's definitely not gonna be on the same level as like the other two. Like if you prioritize school and like your extracurriculars and research, like your social life is gonna be questionable, definitely. But that's all up to your like the way you do it. And some people may even be built different. So
Yeah, no, it's I don't know if such a thing exists of the perfect balance, but I will say something that I know works for me is finding the right scheduling method. So at first I tried a couple different things. I tried like the weekly planner, this and that. In the end, what really worked for me is just I open up like OneNote or some like text editor. I block out my day in like an hour and a half chunks and give myself like 30-minute breaks in between, not regarding classes, and just like anything I know I need to do, I put on there. Of course, I never get necessarily to all of it, but just finding a way to like write things down and see it on a sheet of paper or see it on a computer screen really helps in order for you to like think about how long things are going to take you and block out your time. Because when you can block out your time like that, you can strategize with when you do what. Because without that, a lot of times I'll just like blindly focus way too much on one thing until it's finished, and then I have like XYZ left to do, and it's like, oh no, I have to do it tomorrow. So I don't know, scheduling is good.
I also have to agree with finding the right scheduling method for you. So initially, I used to download calendars or print them out and write things down on the calendars. But something I found more recently that's been helping a lot. I think I use it since sophomore year, and now I'm a rising senior. But it's been really effective for me and helped me balance everything. And I didn't really have to sacrifice one thing to do another thing. Like I could do everything in my life because I use this one app. And I really live by this I swear by this because it just works so well for me. And that thing is Google Calendar. Yeah, who here uses Google Calendar, by the way? Nice. Basically all of us. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have discovered Google Calendar, but it's so great because you can block out times in your day to do things. So block out an hour of your time, an hour and a half. And also, like Alden said, scheduling your breaks is really important. Scheduling your hangouts, your social life, and also your other academics or organizations or meetings you have, really important. And seeing that visually, like I usually do the week view, not just the day view, but the week view. Seeing everything in one place is just so, like, it just makes so much sense in your head. It's like, wow, everything's right there. And I could tell what I have, so I can know when to sleep, when to eat, and what time blocks I have to do certain things. And it's just been a great visual for me. And it's been working so well. And I love how in each time block, you can add your notes, you can add what location it's at. You can also set yourself reminders via either email or notifications based on your preference. And color coding is great too. So if I have like something for a club or organization, I color code that pink. If I have something for my personal, like social life or something personal hobby I want to do, I color code that light blue. And for different classes, I have different colors. So it's just really nice to see that right in front of my eyes. Like I don't have to fumble through and think about what things are due, because you can also have that at the very top, like something that you have for all day. Like I usually put my things that are due at the very top, so that's like priority. And then everything else is like scheduled by the time. So it's just been super nice. And I highly recommend it if you don't use Google Calendar yet to use it. And I know there's other similar scheduling apps like the Apple Maps, or not Apple Maps, Apple Calendar, sorry, Calendar. Why am I thinking directions? So that's just been really nice for me. And yeah, you can always balance things out in your life. You don't ever have to sacrifice something. Fiza was mentioning that triangle, but like you don't necessarily have to choose to. Like in my opinion, it's worth that. You could have all three. You just need to learn how to balance it effectively and know what you have so that you don't ever miss deadlines, but you can also have a life and like have fun in your college career.
So similar to what Hannah said, I was given 3 pieces of advice. So this was something I actually was really curious about. So I reached out to a bunch of upperclassmen who I thought were doing and balancing their life really successfully. And I asked what their advice was, and I did coffee and all that jazz to meet people. But these are like the big 3 things that I learned that I think are the most important things. So first is to set systems, not schedules. So this is find something that you can be consistent with and keep to it. So this is Google Calendar. Make sure you just keep to it. The second is to not let your workday go past what you set it to be. So if you're like saying that you're going to do work from 9 to 5 in every school day, and you are going to do work from 9 to 5, like don't go get coffee with a friend during 9 to 5. Like schedule your life so that it's consistent and you're in the place you're in with your entire mind and body there at the same time. And then lastly, it's to do things in the priority they need to you. So if you have multiple commitments, recognize how many hours a week are healthy for you to dedicate to that commitment each week. So if you're on an executive board, if you're in a committee, recognize if 1 hour is good, if 2 hours, and make sure you stick to that, because it gets easy once you get into leadership roles or in research to extend your time beyond that. But when you do that, you kind of tend to push other things to the side. So something that's been helpful is to just kind of stick to the time you are allotting for it. Don't book more meetings, don't book more this or that, unless like it's a really odd week, but like really try to stick to like respecting your time in that way. So those are my big 3 things.
Well, I like to add that if you're doing research, it should be something you get to do, not have to do. Like research is something that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. And if you're not enjoying your research, chances are you're either in the wrong lab or, maybe you tried research and it might not be for you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So in the same vein of that last question, how do you care for yourself or your well-being, and how do you manage your stress?
I go on walks. So my mentor and I, we have like a really good relationship and a good working relationship. So we both respect if we need to take mental health days to just stay home and do work from home or just not do work at all. And when we have like really bad days in the lab, data's not working, nothing's working, bad day, we go for walks. So our lab, the hospital our lab is in, is next to like a big park. So we just walk for 30 minutes and then come back and try and approach things with a new mindset. So that's something that's really helped me a lot.
For me, I try to keep it social life. And of course I do things like, I go to other sporting events, like I go to football games, basketball games. That always helps me de-stress.
I like to cook, like when I get stressed. My roommate doesn't cook, so I am chefing it up for her whenever I get stressed. So, we be eating 5-star gourmet meals every single day. Very nice.
My
Yeah.
hobbies and interests.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, my hobbies and interests definitely help me de-stress. So I really like to film and edit videos. I like to sing and dance. So if I ever have free time, I always do that, and it just helps me reset my mind. And I'm like, okay, everything's okay.
Yeah, I like walks, and I don't know. I normally like studying or doing. So it's like I'll do research in the lab at my little desk, but every now and then, if I'm like transitioning to a new thing, or I'm just just not in the right headspace, I like going to a different place, like the library, if you can find a spot, depending on the time of year and the time of day. But yeah, I just like transitioning to a new area. And maybe just doing something that's like reading a different book, or something else for the like 10 to 30 minutes, just to like refresh yourself.
Wait, that's a really good point. Have you guys ever like this is also another thing I do, but more rarely. But if you go on Wikipedia, you can just randomly generate articles. Like one time I spent a whole 15 minutes reading about like deep sea squids, and it was the most relaxing 15 minutes of my life.
I haven't heard of that before. I need to look that up. That's pretty cool.
They fight whales. I did not know that.
I do something similar. I just go on my YouTube app and look at the like randomly generated TED Talk that usually comes up on my YouTube home, and I just click a random one every time.
Awesome. All right, so we have a question in the chat. Was there a project you were really interested in and the research team wasn't taking in undergrads, particularly at your skill level at that time? How would you follow up after a while?
Oh, that was basically the story of how I got into my lab. My PI was like, "Oh yeah, like you don't have like basically until your maybe second part of your third year, you don't have the skill set required to work in this lab." And she told me that my freshman year, and so I joined a VIP, which was kind of aligned to what they were doing in the research lab, just so I could become at least familiar with the context in which they were working, um, as well as like pursuing like little side projects on my own over the summer, which was more so like coding, making sure I had basic wet lab, like I knew how to do like decantation, stuff like that. And so I came again the next year and I was like, hey, remember me? I'm back. Can I please join? And she was like, okay. And so just try your best. Like if you were told no, you don't have the skill set, that's not a closed door. That's like a transparent glass door. It's there. It's open, waiting for you. You just have to like get the skill set they're telling you to get. And it's not that hard. As long as you show you're trying, they'll probably be more than open.
Awesome. All right, I know we're getting close to time, so we have a few more questions. What are the resources you guys use when seeking a research position on campus or even off campus?
I know for me, definitely, I mean, faculty web pages, just Google search like GodTech physics department or GodTech chemistry, or whatever department you're in, faculty, and then going on the faculty web pages. And as far as for non-Georgia Tech related research positions like RAUs or summer internships, that can be a bit tricky. The NSF has a website for RAUs, but for a lot of non-RAU type research positions, it can be difficult to know. I know if you're looking to do research that's similar to what you do in the lab, in which you're probably you're a more competitive applicant for because you have prior experience in that field, the best idea, I think, is to open a dialogue with your professor, your PI you're working for. I mean, they know the field. They've probably heard of programs. They can definitely assist you in one way or the other with finding what is out there as far as research positions.
I also have some experience with non-REU type research positions. LinkedIn, just go on LinkedIn, look up research intern. Like if you're a biology research intern, apply to everything you see. It's a numbers game. I worked at Lawrence Livermore National Labs as a research intern for computational modeling. So it's definitely doable. Definitely is a numbers game. So just keep that in mind. Rejection is just redirection. Do not take it to heart.
Yeah, I like to build upon what Alden said. Having a relationship with your PI definitely helps. The RU I'm at this summer, I'm actually working with the professor who who's the grad advisor of my professor at Georgia Tech. So I think that's kind of funny.
Awesome. And then one more quick question. Do you primarily use research for credit hours or as an aside, either paid or unpaid?
I was actually just about to reply to this in the chat, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. So I primarily did research for credit. So for 3 of the semesters that I did research, I did it for credit, but for one of them, I was able to apply and receive the McCallum Undergraduate Research Scholarship. And through that, I got a stipend for it. So I did research for pay. The choice between the two really depends on your preference and what you want to get out of your research at Tech. So if you would like credit for your research, you can definitely talk to the PI and talk to the advisors for that. Otherwise, you can also look into how to get it for pay. What were you saying, Andy?
Yes, when I started my research, I did it for credit. And then the professor saw that I was doing a good job, so he offered to pay me. So that's the moral of the story here, I guess.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the professor and their funding situation. I mean, at Georgia Tech, most of the professors have good funding, so you don't necessarily have to worry about that. But they will, if it's going to be for pay, it will be a conversation you'll have with them as to if they think that's a good idea or not, because it's all dependent on, what they think.
I will also say it depends on kind of your pathway. So for the research option, you do need to get credit hours. So there is like a certain number of credit hours that you have to do if you're considering doing the research option. But there are ways to get paid. So we do have the President's Undergraduate Research Award, which is a stipend award for students conducting research. And there's also, I'm not sure how this one works, but there's also the Early Research Award, which is what I fell under when I first got started. So there are different ways to get research payment.
I will say, I don't know if this is necessarily correct, but based on my current research, doing research for pay still accumulates credit hours. They're audited credit hours, but those still account towards the credit hours you need for the research option or anything else. Even another thing to note, and I didn't know this, I had to look it up, but your research hours for pay still count for credit hours for counting you towards a full-time student, because you're still doing work. It's for pay, but you're still doing research and work at Georgia Tech. So it makes sense that that's part of you being a full-time student. There's some other things it does or does not count for. It's a little dodgy for the pay stuff.
You can't do both. So you can't get credit. You can't audit hours and credit, but you can't do them for the same thing. So yes, so we want you to always be a full-time student. And if you don't know what those numbers are or anything like that, you can reach out to your advisor. But you can also reach out to the Europe office because we have those numbers available for you.
Yeah, from my experience, I think if you can do it for pay, you should. I TA in addition to everything else. So there's a cap on how much you can work as an undergraduate for the school, and it's 20 hours a week. So unfortunately, I don't do research for pay. I just do it for credit, which is fine. Like if I wasn't doing it for credit, I'd be part-time. So it's probably better for me. But yeah, I would just keep that in mind, especially if you're considering doing like work study or TAing or anything like that on the side.
And this is another addition I wanted to make to everything that was said, but besides research for credit and for pay, you could also do research volunteer-based. So usually a lot of like advice that I give to students is if they're not able to get into a lab, I tell them maybe you should reach out to the PI or professor or whoever it is that's overseeing the research and ask if they could do it by volunteer basis. And usually this shows the professor that you are actually very interested in the research, and seeing it really demonstrates your passion for it. So I think that's a really helpful thing to know in case you're not able to get into a research lab at first. You can still demonstrate that passion and interest in another way by suggesting that method as well.
Awesome. So we have 2 more questions that we can kind of quickly go through. How do you think participating in research has helped with your current and future academics and career development?
During research, we figured out what I wanted to do after I graduated, and that is to go to grad school to pursue a PhD. So I think if you're trying to figure out what you want to do after you graduate, doing research is a good way to, figure out what you like and don't like. Whether it's going to industry or going to grad school or something else.
Yeah, no, I agree with what Andy said, and I also agree with what Alden said earlier. Like, research really allows you to open up your mind to other fields and really know what your subfield is about. And if you like it or if you don't like it, it'll really inform your decision on what you want to do post-grad. So in my case, I really learned that I love trial and error. It's my favorite thing. So I also while in undergrad, I tried out like R&D, like electrical engineering stuff, and I really liked that. So post-grad, I'm considering like a PhD in like condensed matter physics, but I'm also possibly considering a master's in electrical engineering before I do that.
Yeah, just oh,
Go for it all.
Oh, I was just gonna say briefly, yeah, I mean, your experience in undergrad has everything to do with the career you're going to have. Like that's the reason to do undergraduate research. Like your experiences here are going to be the first steps you'll take to determining what you want to do after your undergraduate, after everything. So really it's yeah, I mean, whether you have a good or bad experience, I mean, you learn a lot from that. So using that towards your future is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I also think research gives you a lot of like soft skills. So you learn team building, teamwork. There we go. Like how to work with a team. I have a mentee now, so I've learned how to be a good mentor. My research lab has put me in connection with physicians to shadow, and now I have my dream shadowing physician. Like the connections you get and working with a PI, the skills you learn in communicating with someone older than you and responsible for you is huge, because I've gotten way better with communicating with authority figures. So it's gotten way better for me in that way. So I think having research in general, if it's for a semester, if it's for longer, teaches you a lot of soft skills that you can translate to any career, and also helps you in general with your career development skills. They also, most of the people in the lab, like above you, have done professional development stuff. So my PI, my mentor, they both looked over my CV. They taught me how to write a CV, how to write a cover letter. So these are things that like I was taught through my lab specifically.
Awesome. And to wrap things up, what else would you like to say to fellow students considering participating in research?
You should do it.
Yeah, do it. That's...
Do it. That's like the gist of it. I could say a lot, but you should just do it. Nike.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, please come to office hours and ask us, because we'd be happy.
Yeah. If you want specifics on your situation or your like comfortableness on any sort of like research related thing, our office hours are always going to be open for you.
And I will also say, something my mentor said to me that really stuck and is another reason why I stay in research is the stuff you do in research are the first of its kind. It's things that no one in the world is thinking about, no one in the world is currently doing, which is why you're researching it. And having that ability to be on the precipice of something is very unique to research. So it's really exciting to be able to have that perspective on the work you're doing and your global impact potentially.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Risha, do you want to wrap us up?
Thank you. I'm typing in the chat furiously. The students on the call, the URAs who are available. So not everyone is in Atlanta and actually in Georgia. I'm actually gonna have y'all URAs tell us where you are at the moment and kind of quickly what you're working on in order of spotlight. So Andy?
I'm in Athens. I'm actually working at UGA, ironically. I'm working on development of computational methods to speed up high accuracy calculations of molecular properties based on quantum mechanics.
Thank you. Anisha.
So I'm in Atlanta. I'm doing my Puro Award right now, and I'm working right now on the background work on open sourcing the VR task I've created and finishing up the algorithm to compute navigational scores for participants.
Perfect. Hannah.
I'm in Atlanta right now. I am not currently doing research over the summer, but I do plan to get back into it in the fall.
Fiza.
I'm in Washington, D.C. It's my hometown. I'm working as a geophysical sciences intern at this government contractor and doing research at a local university with 3D topological materials and looking at ballistic transport and that.
Alden.
I am in Tsukuba, Japan, working at the National Institute for Material Science on nitrogen vacancy centers in diamonds, which is a really, really interesting spin-1 system for quantum sensing, quantum communication, quantum computation, and it's been exciting. And I just, yeah, it's been a great opportunity. And, you know, I wouldn't be here if I didn't get involved with research. So yeah, no, I think it's a great thing to do.
So thank you for joining us from wherever you are. And so we'll be working, Andy will be working on getting those summer office hours available to everyone that's part of the Ignite program and any student that's at Georgia Tech for the summer. And so they'll get that out to you. They are hardworking students here, right? And so they're doing multiple jobs at the same time. So I just want to thank Gracie for being our intern today and doing a fabulous job of moderating the call today. And I want to thank Andy, Anisha, Hannah, Fiza, Alden for just showing up and just being very candid about research at Georgia Tech and beyond, and also being very insightful in terms of how students can get involved and why you should get involved. This is recorded, and so we will have this up and available, and we'll email it to everyone that's on the call today, so you know where, if you missed anything, you can go back and you can share with your friends and family. So, Alden, you have something?
Yeah, I just want to say if anyone does have questions or would like to schedule a meeting time, my office hours aren't officially like open, but you can email me based on the website and we can schedule time if you have any questions immediately or anything. So.
Fantastic. That's it. Thank you.